Welcome back, everyone, to Gotcha Interact. I'm going to be looking at the Abyss, or we both are. We're going to be looking at the Abyss, talking about really how this Abyss is going. Usually we wait towards the end of an Abyss rotation just because we want to make sure that everybody has kind of had the ability to look at things, get their own personal feelings on it. But honestly, this one right now has just had a lot of thoughts on a lot of people's minds already, and we kind of wanted to just talk about it. This isn't a what should you do in the Abyss? How does this Abyss, what characters exactly should I use? And we'll talk about that here and there, but mainly we're looking at maybe some of the issues you're going to encounter in the Abyss, and then possibly some of the remedies to possibly fix those issues with some solutions. But overall, I'm going to go through. Sometimes we're going to be looking at the enemies. Sometimes I'm going to even try to go through some of showing you guys what can and can't work between what we've shown in our own kits as well as our teams and our accounts. So overall, first and foremost, though, let's look at the actual things that you're going to be fighting. The first half of Chamber 3, now obviously 10, 9, 10, and 11 are not going to be extremely difficult. We're mainly just going to be talking about 12, the floor of 12 here. Now, the issue a little bit here is that there's nothing really in Chamber 1, which usually we tend to see some annoyances in Chamber 1 here and there. But honestly, from what I've seen, Chamber 1 and floor 12 isn't really that much of a problem. But in Chamber 2 is where we start to get a little bit hectic. On the first half, you have the Gold Flame, Kukasaur, Tyrant, and this basically instantaneously, almost a few seconds into the fight, he will immediately go into kind of like a Phoenix form, and he'll fly extremely high, to the point where something like a charge attack from Neuvillette can't reach him. And he has a Pyro Shield on him. And he moves around a lot, and it's extremely difficult to hit him and do any damage because you're just hitting the shield. So you need to get Hydro characters that are going to focus that. The best way that I think I've seen it done, I don't know about you, Rift, but was to use Farina. I don't know, what was the best and easiest way to really get rid of that shield for you?
So for me, I did this Abyss just yesterday, and I actually did use a Neuvillette team, but yeah, I had Farina in the team, and granted, like you're talking about, Farina does contribute quite a bit to taking out the shield just because those summons are going to be on top of that boss no matter where he's really at. Those summons will float all the way up there and be kind of helping with the shield. Even so, my whole team, for context, was Neuvillette, Farina, and then I was using Zhongli and Shiori, mainly because of another boss that we'll talk about. But I just love that team anyways. It's been a great team, even just as it is. But even with Farina on top of Neuvillette for getting off the shield, because the Geo is doing very minuscule. It's really still Neuvillette and Farina alone. Farina working out really great. I was still able to hit the shield with my Neuvillette, but I kind of had to learn where I needed to be for fighting this. So I didn't necessarily get it first try as far as getting the shield off as quickly as possible. But I did figure out that if you stand further away from the boss and give a little bit more angle, at certain points you'll notice you actually are hitting the shield with Neuvillette. The very end of Neuvillette's Hydro Beam, he is barely able to hit him at certain points, not 100% of the time. So that when I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay, it's not that bad, and I'm able to take off that shield in just one rotation and then go right into my second rotation to actually get in some good damage.
For me, it was mainly waiting for him to throw those little missiles on the ground, get rid of them with Neuvillette's normal attacks, and just have Farina's skills just go attack the guy in midair. That worked out pretty well for me. So if you have Farina, that's probably going to be your best bet overall. Looking beyond the first half, though, the second half is another issue that we find ourselves in. This is a new boss that has dropped, mainly focusing on throwing a bunch of Night Soul into it. It is not about how much Night Soul points that you have and use. It is about how many normal attacks, charge attacks, plunging attacks that are in with an elemental hit are going to be hitting this thing, but also if they do have Night Soul as well. So it's not the strength of the attacks, it's the quantity of the attacks. Now, for some odd reason, when I first did this, like an absolute idiot, I thought, yes, if I just use Shilonin, who hits like two times, really, when you use her skill to really get the buff before her Night Soul points go away, I was like, yes, all 90 of those Night Soul points are going to go right into smacking this thing, and I'll be like set. Don't do that. That was just stupid on my part. following characters that do a lot of normal attacks or stuff like that, characters that I know that you probably use like Chasca are going to be extremely good, and it makes sense why that character is on the banner, or was on the banner. It makes sense why this boss as well is coming out kind of in this time period, which that's another kind of sore spot that we'll talk about later as well. A little bit later, now looking at the 12th chamber, or the 12th floor 3rd chamber, the first half is going to be the Golden Wolf Lord, which you are going to need Geo most likely. It's going to make sure that you're going to basically get through this without a hitch. Now, I do want to say, I technically did not use Geo in this team. I just hit it really, really hard. That's really all I did. You can get it to really low HP at a certain point. That's what I did. And then as soon as he throws up all the Geo, he has these Geo Wolf Skulls. I think there's about 3 of them. And you have to just do attacks to them. But if you have Geo, it almost instantaneously breaks them. So having a Geo team is going to do extremely well. Or even one Geo character is going to do very well. Even like a Ningguang or something, just as a 4th character, would do great to just get rid of the shield and using the other 3 characters to do your damage. Characters like Noelle is a good shielder, just stuff like that. Kachina, Shilonen, characters like that are going to be great. But keep in mind that characters like Shilonen, they might have an issue hitting all 3 because they have to kind of get everywhere, so their infusion might be gone by the point that it's gone or whatever. So either way though, Golden Wolf Lord always been a kind of part of contention if you don't have a lot of Geo. And then the Eon Blight Drake, which I don't think a lot of people have too much of an issue with. As long as you have a bow character in the team, you'll be able to hit its wings and kick it down on the ground, and it's not that difficult. I don't think that the Abyss is necessarily quote-unquote hard because of each of these bosses. I think it's the accumulation of each of them. I don't know. What do you think, Rift?
I think you're onto something with that. Definitely, it's the fact that you have. I think. Okay, first off, the number 1 and number 2 culprit, the Wolf Lord, and then on the other half of a previous chamber, but it's still the other half, so it's the different team, that Papilla, right? That do somewhat require very specific either mechanics or they want a certain element to be played. And I think the Papilla is the number 1, of course, because you really want to get through that Night Soul specific shield. And if you're not, it just makes the fight a lot more difficult because he's not getting stunned. There's no resistance, shredding that's happening. You're not getting as much of a damage opportunity, which that's arguable because it's not like it goes all over the place or it's undamageable or invulnerable to damage. But you really just want to get that off. And if you're not getting it off, it just makes the fight a lot harder. And so I guess parking on this boss for a minute here. If you have Chasca, you're good to go. You're set because Chasca is the best character in the game to fight this boss. She is the fastest at taking off the shield. And if you don't have her, I think the number 2 character or 2nd place character would be Kanish. And the reason I say that is because he does his attacks that are Night Soul and have the Night Soul mechanic tied to it relatively quickly. He weaves in some normals in between his skill. And so he's getting that in there a lot. But also the nature of the team he likes to play anyways, which is a burning team, procs very quickly. If you proc burning on this boss, you're dealing elemental damage very quickly and almost without thinking about it. Naturally, right behind that, Novelette, or just at that point, any character that's attacking very quickly, combined with all the other off-fielders that are also probably hitting pretty quickly, is going to do well. The issue, though, is that this boss has a time limit with this shield. And if you cannot break the shield in that time, it doesn't matter, even if you're very close. It's as if you never hit the shield at all. And so it's just going to, the shield will have to just go back up, and you never got a really good damage phase. You never got the resistance shred. So it is kind of posing a problem for people who don't have a specific character like Chasca or even other Natlan characters like Kanish, because in theory, people would be like, well, you could just use Mualani, but Mualani's not good either because she just hits so slow. She's not going to, it takes her just way too long to build up to getting that shield off because she's a slow attacker. Yes, she has Night Soul, but it's just too slow. And that's also why Shilonen doesn't work, because she does only 2 hits from on field and then she's going off field. You're using your other characters at that point. And like Vixen was talking about, it's not about how much Night Soul points are you using. It's, did you do the attack or not? It doesn't matter how much it's being consumed. Yeah. It's the quantity, exactly. Kachina is a good option for free to play because outside of all of the other Natlan characters, outside of Chasca, she's just about the fastest option that we have right now, because she's consistently using that from off field. You can use her on field and do her little jumpy attacks. I think Auroron can be used if maybe you want to do an overload team specifically, or just an electro charge team with him to help his personal damage. But he has some Night Soul that's being used. It's just going to be really tough getting that shield off if you don't have a specific character like Chasca. But I think it still can be done in theory.
I think there's a lot to kind of go off with about that, and I think that's where the first issue kind of comes up, and I think where almost the first answer comes up as well. There has been probably the biggest issue, I think, overall looking at this Abyss that I've seen with a lot of people, as well as our own Discord as well. They've kind of been saying, look, there is a lot of issues. All I'm getting is I have to just pull Chasca. I have to just pull the new characters over and over again. And to an extent that's true, because, look, we're in a gacha game. They're going to happen consistently. New characters are going to come up and replace old characters. You have, that's the other issue, I think, is that some people are maybe annoyed that, you have characters that are too specific and they do either too much, there's too much damage. You've got characters like Arlecchino or something like that that are crazy, and then Malwika's coming right after her. Malwika can't do 400k normal attacks, because then the power creep's just going to keep spiking after her. So you have to think smart, right? So that, people are saying the characters are too strong. Dial them back. Make them more basic. Stop doing, bank on old kits, but try to maybe do them better or something like that, or make them similar. And then they come out with like a character like Malwika, who, instead of being the 7-star Xiangling Bennett combo that would break the game, you have just another pyro DPS, which perfectly fits in line with your character, but doesn't necessarily fit in line with what a lot of people maybe specifically wanted, or at least said that they wanted. And so on one side you have characters that are too specific, so the game then makes a character like Malwika that's just another pyro DPS. And then you have characters like Chasca come out and people are saying that's too specific, and the Abyss is then just tailoring to them. I can't do anything. If I didn't pull in Natlan, now I can't do the Abyss. Sadly, that's just how gacha games go. They want you to pull the new stuff, and the new stuff's gonna replace the old stuff. Ayaka, we need someone new besides her to really come into Cryo, and since there hasn't been someone new besides Risley to really take her throne, you have those characters that have just fallen off and taken time, and their stats are just not up to par with everything else that's coming out right now. You have your supports that are doing way better than others. People don't use Jean anymore. You use characters like Kazuha. Now you have characters like Shilonen, who basically power crept Kazuha. So there's just so much, I think, that you have to, guys, remember that power creep is just going to happen. It is a gacha, but I do understand the annoyances with specifically this Abyss. I even had some issues as well, so I want to make that known. I don't know about you, Rip. I know that you had Chasca, so it was probably an easy breeze, and then obviously the Neuvillette with Chiori was also a breeze through everything, because once again, if you can keep Farina, for my issue, I didn't have maybe... Here's what I'll say. When I did the Abyss, I had Chamber 3 going on. I didn't use a Geo character, like I said. I used Neuvillette, Farina, Kazuha, and Baiju, so the old best Neuvillette team. The second half, what I used was mainly to fight the Papilla, which was Arlecchino, Yelan, Shilonen, and Bennett, which was mainly also to help out with the Eon Blight Drake, because I wanted to make sure I had a bow character to knock him off the ground. Both those instances, I didn't get rid of everything I needed to, especially with the Papilla. I actually went into the void state, or whatever that it goes into, and that thing hurt. But you can, from what I did somehow, I didn't think I got fully hit by it or something, because I stayed alive somehow. It should have killed my Bennett, but I somehow stayed alive. So maybe if there's a way, maybe possibly you can dodge it with either a burst animation or something like that when it does a big damage hit. But there's ways to circumvent it. But I just want to say, someone like me who's been playing the game for 4 years straight has obviously been doing content creation about the game, but has been playing non-stop. It does not matter how far you get in the game. If the Abyss wants to be rude to you, it will. I had about 30 seconds left on each time. I did get 36 stars, as you can see. but it was extremely hard. I had about 20 to 30 seconds on the second and third chamber left before I got to the next one. So sometimes the chambers are just not going to be nice to you. I don't know, Rift. Maybe did you maybe see some things? I know it was an easy abyss for you, but or an easier abyss. Did you see some things that were maybe specific to you that you could see some other players having issues with?
Well, I actually just wanted to say that for context, your clears, you're having a C2 Arlecchino with the weapon. You never let
Yes.
C1 with the weapon. Like, just to give it a little bit of context so that,
C2
you people,
R1
keep that in
Shilonen.
mind that, okay, well, if he did it with this team, that means I can too. And while it may be still possible at C0, because it could be possible. I mean, you had 20, 30 seconds. That's time for another rotation and a half, maybe even 2 full rotations. So this is just something to keep in mind. But for me, my experience with this abyss, yes, I used Zhongli Chiori, pretty goated combo for the first half. Works like a charm on the Golden Wolf Lord. So first half was not an issue for me at all. Even the Kukasaur. And yes, I was using Neuvillette Farina, and those were my 2 characters to use for getting off the shield. And it did it. It did it just fine. Even if I wasn't hitting the shield with Neuvillette, I think I still would have had plenty of time to, just clear anyways with the 3 stars on that chamber. And even so, I found a way where I can actually hit the shield with my Neuvillette. So Neuvillette and Farina was both taking out the shield, and I did it about in the first rotation every single time I had a try at it. The thing is, the Papilla is what I'm going to be noticing is the greatest issue for most people, assuming you don't have Chasca. I would say try Kanish burning teams, but I know not everyone has that. So it's going to be apply a lot of element, and as much as you can, try different things to see what's going to work, even based on like internal cooldowns, what's just going to work for most application as possible. Xiangling's probably naturally pretty good because her ICD is very not present, actually. So she's probably going to be okay for that. I used Xiangling. My team for the second half was Chasca, Diona, Bennett, Xiangling. But the whole thing that's trivializing that run is Chasca herself, because Chasca's so goated for this boss, it's not even funny. 1 charge of Chasca's full 6 bullets for her charge attack takes like 25% of the shield off. And some, with, if you got other characters hitting, I mean, Xiangling's hitting off field. So overall, I only have to do 3 charge attacks with Chasca, and that shield's gone. And there were some rotations where I had to do the full 4, which Chasca does 4 charge attacks, even without Phlogiston use, meaning I can do 4 charge attacks in the Abyss, and then use her burst. That's a full rotation with Chasca. And so even when I had to use full rotation, it still was enough time where she could get the shield off. And then I would just reset up for the second rotation while the thing, the Papilla is downed, and I can get even more damage in. So for me, the Abyss was pretty easy, I would say overall. It wasn't like it was difficult at all. I've definitely had much harder abysses, for sure. This was a pretty easy clear for me, but I had... The only reason, guys, is I had the right characters. The best in slot characters, if I must say. And that's kind of like what you have to say, because there's characters that can get around that won't be best in slot, but Chasca really is just best in slot for that boss. Not because she has higher damage than other characters. Neuvillette and Arlecchino do more damage than Chasca, for sure. But because that boss is so much more mechanic focused with that shield, Chasca is just number 1 for that boss. And then with the Wolf Lord, it was just easy because I happen to have Chiori, and I also happen to have Zhongli. I don't have Navia, I don't have Ito, I don't have your on-field DPSs, but because I had the best off-field combination that the Geo roster has to offer with Zhongli and Chiori, they're busted together, and honestly just a lot of damage. I had the synergies there, and that just happened to line up. Other abysses are going to happen to line up for your account and not for other people's accounts. That's just kind of, once again, how the game is going to be. If you just don't have every character, then I would say it's safe to assume that every once in a while, content's going to be thrown at you where it once in favors and even heavily favors these characters that you don't have. And that's just how it's going to be, because I almost didn't get Chasca, and so it would have been a lot harder.
I agree. I think there's times where there's like you said, I totally agree with you. I think the abysses are just going to change. It's going to mess you up. It's going to sometimes put you on your back. Sometimes it's going to be really nice to you. And obviously for this one, it's kind of just like the Imaginarium Theater, right? Certain elements, like this past one, I know some people maybe had some issues with, and the one before that, they give you 3 elements, and you're like, those are like my 3 weakest elements. I have like 12 of those characters like built and ready to use. And so maybe you have a really rough time in the Imaginarium Theater, and you can't get all the buffs by having like 21 or whatever characters. Maybe that's a problem for you. Maybe there's an issue, and that's the same thing here, is that a similar thing, I should say, is that there's just, as we're getting in, the abysses are changing. But I do want to say, overall, my personal opinion about this abyss, I think this abyss is still extremely difficult. People are going to say that, you know, this is changing, we're having issues here because of this, because of that. In my personal opinion, I had issues when Sumeru was out, because I didn't pull a character until Alhaitham. So I had a lot of issues, and even when I did have Alhaitham, I still have never pulled Nahida. I had a lot of issues with the EM-based, highly specific, you know, things that were kind of happening in the Abyss. You know, a lot of Dendro or Bloom specific.
And when like a lot of Burgeon, remember that?
Burgeon.
With the Baptist guy. Burgeon was the win every day of the week, and so, yeah.
It was painful. No, exactly. And because Burgeon was the best, I didn't build Toma, because I couldn't care less. And I didn't have a Nahida to really make it worth it. And I know, but on that way, you're crutching yourself. So I know that people are saying, well, it feels like I just have to pull a character. Like, I just have to pull one of these Natlan characters. Kinda, yeah. I mean, you can get it done. Obviously, I mean, I did it without, I mean, I used Shilonen, but besides that, the other characters that I used weren't Natlan focused, and Shilonen didn't even really help me here necessarily in the idea of how she was supposed to. I didn't use her on the Geo boss, and she's not really that helpful against Papilla, like, technically. So, yes, but she was an extremely good buffer. She did her job. So I think that overall, if you can, there are ways that the Abyss is going to be nice to you, but you just have to have extremely high investment and stuff like that. That's why it is Endgame, though. This is what people wanted. They wanted an extremely hard content piece, and they're getting an extremely hard content piece. And I know some people are going to say, well, this or this is the problem with this hard content. I didn't want it to be like this. No offense, it's kind of what you guys asked for. So you got to take what you get, you know what I mean? So, and I'm not trying to be rude about it. I just want to be, I just want to be like, look, it is what it is. And the content's just getting difficult. There are plenty of other content creators I know that have talked about it as well, and are probably going to make videos about it as well, saying how difficult this is, especially for free to play or whatever. But I know Rift, someone has done it with even 4 stars. Now, extremely highly invested 4 stars, don't get me wrong, but still, it's not that it's impossible, it's just extremely difficult, and that's just gonna happen. I think you put it the best. Certain abysses are gonna line up for your account, and others just aren't.
One thing that, and I just had this on my mind, I thought about this earlier, I think a really good way to kind of picture this in your mind is when you look at Imaginarium Theater, we all know it's more about the horizontal focus on your account, but at a more intermediate level, like it's not at the ceiling level that we see in the Spiral Abyss, they bring it down to kind of an intermediate right in the middle, but testing all of the different areas of your account, every single element, all 7, right? But no higher in difficulty than here, not up here. Whereas the Abyss, every time the Abyss rotates, it's more vertical. It's going to sit on one element, maybe 2 or 3, or certain just teams rather, sit on that, but go all the way sky high to the ceiling. So on my account, I don't have a cryo DPS. If something comes out where it just favors that, or maybe it wants Navia, I don't have Navia, and it just, that's the winning team, and it's like over here, and it's going to the vertical investment all the way over here. But I've got everything filled out over here. My account's very horizontal already, and Vixen knows this. I love Imaginarium Theater because I built every single 4-star. I like building all of the characters, even if the community doesn't like them. Yes, I built my Razor. Why? Because I can, and I actually kind of like him. It's just fun. I'm more about different play styles, you could say. So Imaginarium Theater is quite literally a sandbox for me. But certain abysses, you're going to have the pieces because you've vertically invested into that. And then another abyss rotation, it's going to be over here, and you don't have it. So you're not going to be able to get it. That's just how it's going to be.
To exactly prove your point, this abyss was extremely hard for me, and the only way that I even did it is I to take your point with you, it was here. The only way I was even able to get up here was because I didn't use the same characters and get those characters to get my investment. I used other characters and highly invested into them. Even if they would perform this like down here normally, I highly invested into them to put myself on par with those teams. I don't have Chasca. I don't have Kanish. I don't have Emily. I don't have for that Kanish team. I don't have Mualani, which I know Mualani doesn't necessarily work, but I don't have any Natlan DPS. Technically, I shouldn't be doing well in this Abyss. But to even out across the board my play, I had to get a C2
You have
R1
the constellations.
Arlecchino. I had to get a C1 R1 Neuvillette. Now I have a C0 R0 Farina, but I have a C2 R1 Shilonen. You know, my Bennett is C6 with a pretty good weapon. I've got, I've got my Yelan. She doesn't have a rare weapon, but she's highly invested. I have a Kozua, C1 R0. Don't ask. And I've got a Baiju as well, C0 R0. But I have the pieces that have made some of the best teams, and I still struggled. But I've got it done. So it just takes time. Some abysses are going to be nice to you. Some abysses are going to put you on your back. And this one definitely had some teeth showing for me. And I know that a lot of people had a lot of things, especially people that were saying, I can't do this abyss because I don't have an Natlan DPS. And they're almost crying, like, and not in a bad way. I just mean to say, like, they're almost like in straight up tears because they're like, I don't want to have to pull Chasca, which thankfully she's gone. Because I wouldn't want people to just pull Chasca so they could get an extra 200 primos. It's just not worth it.
Right. Yeah, and you can just tell that with your account, as you've explained, it really, if you think about it, guys, it's really just 5-star pulls put in other places, but the same amount of investments there. I just decide to pull more characters on my account. My only constellation for 5 stars on my, and leaving out standards, is my Hu Tao. She's the only limited 5-star character that I have a single constellation for. She's a C1. Every other 5-star on my account is C0 because I would rather just have a new character than a higher investment in my Neuvillette or Arlecchino or Shilonen, you know, where all the good constellations are that people are always talking about. I'm just sitting there like, well, I'd rather just have a new character. I have Sijuin, I have Chiori, I pulled Chasca. I have a lot of characters that, you know, the community will say, and definitely that of the meta community is going to say, I mean, garbage characters. Sijuin's no better than A tier at best, but I love my Sijuin, and I've had a lot of fun with her. And I've even cleared Abyss with her, not because of her, but because, I mean, while I was putting her in a go-to team, and Neuvillette's the one still doing the damage, Farina's in there, I just wanted to try a different variant that uses and involves Sijuin. She's a lot of fun to use, and like I guess said earlier in the video, more about the play style, and I have a lot of fun factor in the characters that pulls at me more than higher investment to see higher numbers. And that's just it. But the point is, you're seeing my pulls are more stretched out because everything's C0, but I have 18 characters. Vixen may have 12 characters, but 6 of them are like C1 or C2. So the pulls are still there. He has the same amount, but it's just squeezed into less characters, but they're more damage. The other thing to keep in mind, that's if we've played the same amount of time. Vixen's actually played since day 1, so has more overall 5-star pulls than I do. But I'm using that as the sake of analogy, and that should make sense to most people. But it's just, that's how it's going to work.
Well, that's everything we've got talking about kind of the Abyss in this video. If you guys had any other thoughts, any other ideas, let us know down in the comments. I know this is going to be a big one. A lot of people are going to be talking about it. A lot of people have talked about it and probably will talk about it for a while. I think this is going to be an Abyss that a lot of people are going to remember, probably like when the first Geo Wolflord popped up. That was a talking point for a while. That was almost a year ago or so, or actually even longer than that, maybe something like that. So there's a lot of interesting things that have happened, and just let us know what you guys think down below. I know that we both have kind of talked a lot about kind of almost everything, but I think our points kind of just stand out across the video. So if you guys agree with us, or if you guys are like, you know what, you guys are absolutely off your rockers, I have no clue what you're talking about, also let us know as well. Well, thank you guys, though, for watching the video. Please go ahead and like and subscribe. If you guys want to show us maybe some of your gameplay as well, we do have an interacting with you part of our Discord if you guys want to join the Discord, and where you guys can share your specific gameplay from the Abyss or the Endgame and put that in, and we'll be able to look at that, and we might even do a video on it as well. We have done a few of those in the past, and we're looking to do some of those in the future. So if you guys want to do that, please go ahead and check out the Discord. Thank you guys, though, again for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.